If you grew up in the 1970s, you were raised in an experiment that would make most parents today shudder. More freedom, less supervision, fewer safety nets, and a whole lot of figure it out. This childhood didn't just create nostalgia, it rewired how you think, how you handle stress, how you trust others, and even why asking for help can feel strangely uncomfortable. Think back to those summers, filled with wide-open afternoons, no schedules, and no screens. Kids in the 70s didn't need constant entertainment. We invented it. Whether we were building forts out of scrap wood, turning sticks into swords, or simply letting our imagination run wild, we learned to rely on ourselves. In a world that didn't rush to solve our boredom, we learned that we were the ones responsible for creating our own joy. This was the environment that shaped our psychology, our resilience, and our independence. It's these experiences that still influence the way we tackle life today. Let's talk about the Latchkey generation, kids left home alone after school. This was a hallmark of growing up in the 70s. For some, it was a gateway to independence. They learned responsibility early on, cooking snacks, doing homework, maybe even managing a household in their parents' absence. But for others, it was isolating. There was loneliness, a lingering sense of fear, and an overwhelming quiet after school. The results of this latchkey experience were mixed. Some grew stronger, while others felt abandoned. The emotional static that came with those empty hours was real, and for those who experienced the loneliness, it would often evolve into a coping mechanism later in life, the ability to handle everything, but not always the comfort of asking for help.
Fast forward to adulthood. The generation that grew up with this freedom became known as Generation X. Pew Research Center describes Gen Xers as savvy, skeptical, and self-reliant. These qualities didn't emerge from a desire to stand out. They were adaptations to a world where support wasn't always immediate or available. When you learn from an early age that you can't always depend on adults, you start to close off. "I'm good" becomes a reflex, even when you're not. That learned emotional self-containment was survival. Over time, though, it turns into an identity. The person who doesn't ask for help, who can handle the hard stuff, but doesn't always let others see the cracks. But the 1970s wasn't just about personal autonomy. It was also about the larger atmosphere of uncertainty that permeated the decade. Economic strain, political disillusionment, and energy crises were the backdrop. The 1973 oil embargo and gas shortages left an indelible mark on every child who saw their parents in line at the pump, looking at the future with doubt. You could feel the tension in the air, even from the back seat of a car. This sense of a fragile future, where things weren't always reliable or predictable, shaped how a generation viewed the world. It didn't foster wild optimism. Instead, it planted seeds of practicality: conserve, plan, and never assume stability. But there was also a different kind of experience in the 1970s: media psychology. Back then, television wasn't on demand. There were only a handful of channels, and everything was scheduled. Families gathered around the TV, watching the same shows, the same news stories, and even the same commercials. This shared cultural memory effect created a sense of unity, but also taught us to deal with boredom. And boredom? It wasn't something to escape from. It was a place where we invented games, took risks, and found new ways to entertain ourselves. This simple, unstructured time helped build a unique resilience. When you had nothing to do, you had to make something. And in that process, kids from the 70s learned to be adaptive, creative, and comfortable with empty space.
Yet, despite all the freedom, there was a certain social style that came with growing up in this era. Loyalty to your inner circle, privacy, and a general discomfort with oversharing. These were the unspoken rules. If you were a latchkey kid, you might remember not having anyone to talk to after school, and yet you didn't necessarily want to share your feelings with the world. You learned early on that you were going to have to handle things on your own, and that "don't make a big deal out of it" attitude didn't just stay in childhood. It followed you into adulthood. That emotional resilience, it sometimes translates into an inability to ask for help. The quiet confidence that comes from handling it all yourself can also leave you feeling isolated when you really need support. Now, looking at the adult outcome, this unique blend of independence, skepticism, and emotional distance manifests in a couple of different ways. People who grew up in the 70s are capable under pressure, skeptical of exaggerated promises, and highly adaptable to change.
They've learned to stay calm in crises, to conserve energy, and to plan for the long haul. But there's also a challenge. Emotional distance is a double-edged sword. The real growth for many of us isn't about becoming stronger or more self-reliant. It's about learning to let others in without feeling like you're losing your independence. It's realizing that being supported doesn't diminish your strength. If you grew up in the 1970s, think about it. What did independence teach you, and what did it cost you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos on this generation's psychology, let me know. We could dive into the psychology of 1980s kids, or explore why latchkey kids often became anxious adults. Let me know what you want to see next.